Darci, you have Respite, right, for your daughter? Do you want to share a little bit about what Respite is?
Sure. So Respite is an opportunity for Zoe and I to get a break from each other. We use her Nana, my mom, and she goes and hangs out with her Nana, and I go and do the stuff that I need to do in the community, and we all come back and feel really good about the situation after the fact. And I have a little helper right here with me.
There you go. We love having Zoe. How about you, Michelle? Do you use Respite?
I do use Respite. We use Respite. We got one provider through Carina Care, and then we got one provider that was recommended by our case manager, and both of them are amazing. I can't imagine a life without Respite. It does make it so we all have lives. We all need to have a break from everything that we do, and having Respite gives my son that break, so he's not just with me. He needs to be with other people.
Right. And really, depending upon the age of your child, I know my son was very young when we first got Respite. I mean, I would say just a few months old even, because he was so medically fragile. And it really kind of allowed me that opportunity to have a break. But now that he's 30, right, it really helps him be able to get out in the community and do other things. We've really, most of his teenage and adult life, used it for that opportunity for him to get out and get away from me.
So it changes with the individual and
over time.
It does. So how and where do people find Respite?
That's always the challenge. You know, you get the funding, you get approved for DDA, you get your Respite dollars approved, and then the search really begins, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys have suggestions on what you've done?
I know that for myself and for other people that I've talked to, I feel like it's really important to be able to have the opportunity to choose the person that you're going to have care for your child. And we were not eligible for Respite until, we've only had access to it for the last couple of years. And it was really important for that my mom is really involved in my daughter's life, but she can get paid for it, and it makes me feel better about when I'm asking her to help out. And so I've always used my mom for that service. And I know that other people kind of think, oh, I don't want to ask that of somebody. And we've really found that it's even pretty easy to get contracted as a Respite provider.
I think it's really important that families know they can identify somebody and get that person contracted to do the work, whether that's a family member or a neighbor or someone from another group that they're in, a faith-based community, or somebody that they know, right? From school.
Exactly. It can be
school
aides, it can be therapists, it can be friends of your children.
The bus drivers.
The bus drivers.
Right.
You just never know where you're going to find somebody.
Right.
And the training is really simple now. It's all online. It's only, 7 hours and then a 5 hour, so we're talking 12 hours.
That's excellent. That's so much better than it used to be. And it's a good wage. I mean, I think especially if you're looking at young adults or you're looking at people who are doing this as fill-in, it's a really good opportunity for the providers. And a lot of families will say, well, we don't have anybody in our lives, but you have teachers, you have paraprofessionals, you have neighbors, you have school bus drivers, right?
People at church.
People at church. If you have other sons and daughters who might be a little older, right? I know my son's, some of his friends, right, became contracted Respite providers.
So
Colleges.
It's a peer, and it's somebody that
exactly.
as he's aged, it's more appropriate for the kind of Respite that he's accessing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, and I was going to say, don't forget the colleges, because you have students in college who are going to be special ed teachers or people who are going into psychology or social service, and they are great candidates who might want to work with your kid.
Yeah.
Do you have suggestions on how to, who to contact at a college, or?
Well, I think you could just call. I don't know. What do you think? What did I do? In the past, I have contacted individual professors and talked to them about the opportunity, and then they talk to their students about perhaps wanting to work with a kid, and then they can call. I think there's bulletin boards and there's blackboards and there's job searches on. And what about WorkSource?
Well, and that's what I
can
was
put it
going to
out there,
say is
too.
through the colleges, oftentimes through some of the counseling offices, career centers, they'll have
Yes.
opportunities to put things up, to put up a flyer, to put up a bulletin, to do something to recruit people. And families will say, well, I don't want to leave my son or daughter with a stranger, and I would never recommend you do that, right?
Interview them.
Interview them, have them work with you in the home for a while before you go off and leave them. Build that trust up. And if something doesn't feel right in the pit of your stomach, trust that, right? I think that's really important. But just because you don't know somebody right now doesn't mean you can't get to know them.
Yeah. Exactly.
And what a great job for a student, because they get to pick and choose their own hours. You don't have to, if you're not available on a Wednesday, don't take a job on a Wednesday.
Exactly. And it can change based upon your school schedule each term, right? I think that's a real bonus. I know for my family, it kind of has become what the nieces and nephews did as they all turned 18, right? Everybody kind of took a stance at being a provider and working with stuff, which was really great because it not only helped my nieces and nephews, but it really helped them build a closer relationship to my sons, so that when I'm not here, that relationship is much stronger and their idea of how to care for them is much better than it would have been without that experience and opportunity.
Another place I've heard people try is the regular babysitting services that are not necessarily disability specific, and so they can look on those, like maybe like care.com, I don't know, things like that, and then interview those people and say, would you be willing to work with my child with a disability? And if so, would you also be willing to go and get that extra respite training through DDA?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know when my guys were growing up, they're adults now, but as they were growing up, I was a single mom. So I was constantly networking and constantly looking out. There was never a time that I didn't look for providers, no matter how many providers I had, because I knew that it wasn't necessarily a stable workforce. And I needed that to be able to survive. And so it was like, okay, who can I look at? And can I have one provider work so many hours and another provider work so many hours, so that I'm constantly training and developing new people?
Yeah. So it's kind of a shift in your mindset, kind of.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes be overwhelming to think, it's just easier not to go anywhere or do anything. But it's such a preventative, I think it's self-care, and it's preventing a crisis, because my daughter needs a break from me as much as I need a break from her.
Yeah, and it's helping them to build a life and build relationship with other
beyond
people.
her mommy.
Yeah. I'm not going to be here forever. And it's going to be a requirement that my son have relationships with other people. And the more people I can get in his life, the more people I can introduce to him and help broaden their world, building his community. Even if they don't stay with him, there's still people who love him and care about him. And that's going to bode better for him throughout his life, whether I'm here or not.
And think about the impact that it has in their lives as well. I mean, we want the people that we love and care for to be involved in the community. And if there's not any contact with our population at all, how are we building that?
Yeah.
How sad for everybody.
Exactly. Our sons and daughters are such a gift.
Can you talk about the different kinds of respite?
Well, there are different kinds of respite. So there's respite that's provided in a community setting. I know in our community, our Parks and Rec program through our county provides a lot of respite. So there's respite camps and respite opportunities through that. Do you guys have other?
We use just the regular respite with individual providers who are trained through DDA and contracted through DDA, but those are the people that we use in our community.
That's us as well. I know that there's opportunities throughout the state to do planned overnight respite with different agencies, and we have not done that, but it's also an option.
I think there's also agencies that do respite in the communities, right, that you can sign up for to do that as well. So there's lots of different types of respite. And one of the things I heard today was that if an individual, because of their level of need, really requires two people to be safe and supported in an environment versus one person, that you actually could apply for an exception to rule and use your respite to have two people come and be with that individual, because that person really deserves the right to go out in the community and have exploration and opportunities as well.
So that would be like my daughter may be accessing Parks and Rec activity, and they have supports already in place, but she maybe needs a little extra. I could send somebody with her respite dollars to be there while
You would
she's
have
there.
to apply for an exception to rule, is my understanding, but that they really look at that to see if this person really needs that, right? And I think that's a beautiful example, because the ratio at parks, at a camp, say a respite camp or a community program that does respite, may not really meet your individual daughter's needs, but then you could bring in that extra person if it's approved.
If DDA services in general are not quite enough, it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask for more services. It's okay to ask. You might not get them, but it's okay to ask. If you don't put it out there, it's always a no.
Exactly, exactly. The only way you're ever going to get a yes is if you ask.
Yes.
Right? And yeah, you're not going to lose anything by asking, that's for sure. So, and the other thing that I guess I just really hope families know is that there are people around the state, there's parent coalitions around the state and parent-to-parent programs that are there, that are free services that can answer their questions and help them navigate, you know?
I think the saddest thing is not to ask a question and to continue to be more and more isolated, and I think that's just not the answer.
It's not for you or for your child, right? Because this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, and we have to figure out how do we do this for the long haul. Well, ladies, I hope your respite days are joyful and you have some personal time and a break, and that your children get to go do lots of fun things.